Hi, and welcome to Career Plug, where we explore careers, the people behind them. We also help guide and counsel you to the number of career options that exist. We are punching up, I'm making personal calls to my resources and contacts so that you, my audience, can get an idea not only of the number of careers, but everything involved with them. Today, we have a very special guest. But before I get to him, I always got to remember to mention please subscribe. We are trying to grow on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. We're at Career Plug, two G's, careerplug.com. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Find us under Career Plug with two G's. Today, we have a very special guest, a special friend of mine. I will also reveal my fraternity brother I am close to. We are in the same chapter. So, with no further ado, I want to introduce Keith Adams. He is, and I want to give him a proper introduction. So, let me read a little bit of his bio. Keith Adams is a veteran Decatur attorney who, it is said, is the quote, attorney to call if you get in trouble in DeKalb County or any surrounding county of Atlanta. Although Adams began his legal career in 1991 with the FDIC, in January of 1994, he joined the Fulton County Solicitor General's office and in late 1995 became an assistant district attorney for DeKalb County, becoming a well respected trial lawyer amongst both the prosecution and defense bar. In early 2000, Adams left the DA's office and opened his own law firm in downtown Decatur, where he quickly became a sought after criminal defense trial attorney. Part of the reason I have Keith on here is to also introduce you to the man you have seen defending the well known, internationally loved rap artist, Young Thug. He got the best attorney he could get. Welcome, Keith Adams, to the show.
All right, all right. Hey, Gene, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good. I'm good. Good. Thank you. Thank you. We
Happy to be
we're
here
gonna
with
have
you,
some
brother. Happy to be
fun.
here. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. We're gonna have some fun on this platform, this show. I really appreciate you coming on. I think it's important outside of even some of the traditional careers of law and medicine to understand, you know, what it takes to ascend in these fields. Um, Law I know about personally. I am a non-practicing attorney, um, but I know that there are some misunderstandings about the law generally, what it takes to get there.
Yeah.
So, all that said, why don't we
Yeah.
start with just some? I want to dive into. I love that you're Young Thug's attorney. That's great. He's lined up to win with you. We'll get to
Absolutely.
some of that later. But let's start with a little bit more about who Keith Adams is. Who is this man we see over the internet? They got clips of you, Keith, everywhere, and I am sure no one knows, who you are behind all of that. Maybe we could start with like, give us something we don't know or can't find on the internet about you, for example.
Okay. All right. I will do that. So yes. You know what? YouTube is fantastic. TikTok is great, and it's hard to avoid that when you're in a courtroom with a camera in your face. Every minute that you're there. I'm sitting right next to Jeffrey, and the camera's on him, and the camera's on me. But I've been representing Jeffrey for the past 2 years, myself and Brian Steele. That's my co-counsel on the case, the other attorney who represents Mr. Williams. A lot of things that folks. Let me tell you something folks don't know. That before Keith Adams was a prosecutor, before Keith Adams was a defense attorney, Keith Adams was a bike messenger in New York City, Manhattan, riding a bicycle through 42nd Street, 7th Avenue, delivering items a long time ago. That was a long time ago. New York's changed a whole lot since then. But, I came up on the rough and tumble streets of Brooklyn and New York City. And that has a lot to do with what makes Keith Adams the attorney and the person that he is today. Um, so yeah, most folks, folks listen to me and they might hear a little bit of a West Indian accent because I was born in Trinidad. They might hear a little bit of a New York accent because I grew up in New York. They might hear a little bit of Georgia because I've been here for 30 years. But yeah, they don't know that my humble beginnings were riding a bike through the city back in the 1980s.
Wow. I think you just gave us a glimpse of your age, but you're looking good. You're looking good.
Appreciate it, bro.
And to your point, the sometimes there's a misperception when you see someone's career, whether that's toward the middle or end of it, all the years that they've put in
Yeah.
behind it. Um, what are you specifically sort of plugged into these days? You have kids, I know. You went not that long ago to see your daughter perform in New York, but generally,
Yeah.
what are you plugged into these days?
Oh, Gene, to be honest with you, it's hard to be plugged into anything other than Young Thug's trial. Um, we've been at it. We've been on trial for a year and a half. It took us 10 months to get a jury. We've been trying the case for 8.5 months, and so I'm pretty much sleeping, eating, breathing, that trial. It's huge. But separate and apart from that, you're right. I do have a family. I've got a daughter. I'm gonna give her a plug. She is in The Wiz on Broadway up in New York City, doing fabulously. Real proud of her. I've got a young man, a son, who's a senior over at Rhodes College in Memphis, Tennessee. Doing well, getting ready to head off in his pre-med studies. Got a wife who's a business owner. I've got a lot of things going on right now, and so the thing that keeps me grounded in the midst of all of this trial and tribulation down in the courtroom is family. And every once in a while, believe it or not, I get a chance to work on that 1974 Corvette that I got sitting outside in the driveway, that I plan to get together and take a ride up the Pacific Coast Highway over in California one of these days. So that's what Keith Adams is plugged into, man. Work, family, you know, a little bit of personal time here and there, a little bit of travel whenever I can do it. I'll get back to traveling once we get done with this trial. But that's it, man. That's my life
Correct.
right now.
I love it. I love it. And the further plug to your Spelman graduate daughter, and like you said, your
Yes.
son is at Rhodes, so tracking well and doing well, holding up the legacy.
Yes.
You mentioned New York. You have lived in Georgia and
Hmm.
Atlanta for a while. Give us a little bit more brief background on you. So, born, you
Sure.
know, on the islands.
Yes.
Give us a little bit of background.
Yeah, man. I was born in Trinidad. I was born in Trinidad and Tobago. Came up to New York as most West Indians do. When we leave the West Indies, we go either New York, England, Canada, maybe Miami. And so I grew up in Brooklyn. Came up when I was about 8. Grew up in Brooklyn. Left New York to go away to college. Went to Howard University down in
Wow.
Washington D.C. Oh man, and had a great time there. Howard was fantastic. Great school. Where, by the way, Kamala Harris was a classmate. She and I were there at the same time. Um, Graduated, went on down to Tulane University School of Law down in New Orleans, Louisiana. Oh, and Louisiana is a fantastic place, boy. Let me tell you about it. Um, so got my law degree down at Tulane, and one of the summers when I was a student at Tulane, I had the opportunity to clerk at the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, the banking agency that oversees banking regulation, and it was here in Atlanta. And I loved Atlanta. For the summer I was there, I was like, you know what, this is where I'm gonna be. And so when I graduated from Tulane, I said goodbye to New Orleans. It was hard. I mean, them po' boys and red beans and rice and gump, man, it was something else. But I left I left New Orleans, took a young lady with me, came on up to Atlanta, and started my life in this city. And I worked as a banking lawyer for a number of years, and then wanted to do some litigation. It was time to get in the courtroom. I got tired of writing legal opinions and passing it on to outside counsel. I was ready to be in a courtroom myself, and so I left the FDIC. I became a prosecutor, a misdemeanor prosecutor in the solicitor's office in Fulton County, that's Atlanta, and then an assistant DA in DeKalb County, right outside Atlanta. And after about 5, 6 years, it was time. I opened up my own firm, Keith Adams and Associates, and I have been there for the past 24 years, doing primarily criminal defense. And I take it seriously. Being a prosecutor made me a better defense attorney. Um, and I take my charge very seriously. Folks walk in my office with some very serious affairs and charges on their heads. I've tried everything from trafficking to death penalty cases to, rapes and robberies. You name it. I've tried it, and I take seriously the fact that people come in and they pay me their hard-earned money to represent themselves or their family, their loved ones. Um, it's been a great ride. We've had some really big cases. Um, we've had some great successes, and so all of that has led me to being part of the team that represents Jeffery Williams. Everyone else knows him as Young Thug. I know him for the past couple of years as Jeffery Williams, a really nice young man who's honestly nothing like um, the public persona that you see when he performs. Um, but all of that has led me to to be in a courtroom for the last 2.5 years. So that's Keith Adams. That's me and my background, and I've managed
I
to,
love it.
yeah, do a few things along the way. Join a fantastic fraternity, raise a great family. So um, so here I am. This is me.
Yes, you pledged a fantastic fraternity with a number of uh, high status individuals, including the first four Black astronauts. And we could keep going down that list, but we won't.
We,
That is a different
it'll be
call.
it'll be a long program, brother.
It
Let's
would be a
segue
long
out of
day.
that. Yes, indeed.
So I think what I heard in summary is coming out of law school, you went internally for a bank, essentially, and then you transitioned out of
Yeah,
that to
yeah.
go into public defender's office.
Well, prosecutor's office,
Prosecutor,
solicitor's office.
excuse me. I am sorry.
Right,
Yes,
right. That's the solicitor's office is a misdemeanor prosecutor's office. The DA's office obviously prosecutes the felonies, and so um,
correct.
that was my route for about 6 years.
So that transition now, was that hard? Because typically, and maybe some people do or don't know, but typically you'll leave like a corporate position and then you'll take a little bit of a hit on a salary, for example. Was that the case with you?
It was. So the FDIC is a federal agency that oversees the banking industry and banks. And so in 1991, when I came out of school, I did a lot of banking law. I traveled throughout the country. That's back. Well, some folks might remember that was back in the middle of the savings and loan crisis where banks were closing. You know, and so yeah, I left the FDIC and took a little bit of a hit to become a prosecutor, a public servant, essentially. Um, but what I missed in salary, I more than made up for in experience. You don't get any better experience than being in either a prosecutor's or a public defender's office trying cases where you're in a courtroom every day almost. You got to think on your feet, you got to stand up there, you got to know the law, you got to argue against, well learned and esteemed opponents. You got to present yourself well for both the court and the public. And it was a tremendous experience. I became a better attorney for being a district attorney.
Exactly, exactly. And the reason I wanted to touch on that is, again, sometimes people see the end result and they don't know the number of steps, you know, turns, things that are necessary to get where you are. We're talking about a 25-year career,
Yeah.
at this point.
Yeah.
Um, so just to be clear, you are not an entertainment lawyer, because I bet you people are like, he's an entertainment lawyer.
No.
That's what I want to be.
No, I am not. I have never practiced entertainment law or contract law. Um, my practice has been primarily about 75% um, criminal defense. I do a little bit of personal injury, but it's mostly criminal defense. And here's something, another interesting thing you asked me early on, a little bit of background about Keith Adams. I didn't start off wanting to be a lawyer. When I went to Howard University, my mom's a doctor. And so I went into Howard thinking that, you know what, well, I guess I'll be a doctor too. And, went in that path. And somewhere in sophomore year, sitting in an organic chemistry class, I was like,
Whew,
man, this ain't me. I guess that's what did it.
whew.
I said, this is not me. But I've always had an interest in the law. Always had an interest in not necessarily prosecuting or defending, just the law itself. And so I kind of shifted gears at that point and kind of laser focused into what I needed to do to get into a good law school, Tulane, and then ultimately be a good lawyer. Um, and that's the journey that I took. But no, I've never had any interest in being an entertainment lawyer or anything else. Criminal practice has always been um, my interest.
Oh, that's cool. That's real cool. They always say, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life, right? So what's great to hear is that initially, you started on a different path,
Yeah,
but it sounds like you found that the practice of law is a part of you walking in your gift,
yeah,
and I'm sure giving back as well.
yeah, yeah. Absolutely. You know what? I think it was Young Jeezy who one of his songs said, and I love it. I do love it. Um, I appreciated the opportunity to have been a, a district attorney because you have an opportunity to impact people's lives and um, represent the public and so forth. But it's the same thing as a defense attorney. I've had a lot of folks walk into my office, Gene, who are innocent of very serious crimes that they're accused of. I've had some people walk into my office who were facing the possibility of going to prison for the rest of their lives. Their lives being destroyed, their families being destroyed, and they just needed someone to stand up for them. Someone who said, "Okay, you know what? Um, I'm going to make this justice system do what it's supposed to do. And if they say that you've done something, then by God, let them prove it. And if they can't, then you need to walk out that door." And we've been fortunate to put the justice system to its task and to really represent folks effectively. And we've had some great successes along the way. Sometimes justice is about guilt or innocence. Sometimes justice is about what's the appropriate punishment for something that someone has done. Right? And I've been fortunate to fight those battles on both fronts and had a good deal of success. Um, some disappointments, some losses. Um, I've seen a lot of young kids um, whose lives have been derailed based on either decisions that they made or prosecutions that were unwarranted. Um, but by and large, we've done a good job for the people who have come into our office.
So, what's weird is that I've known you for a number of years, and what's a little weird is, so maybe I have been under a rock, but took one of my nieces or nephews to ask me about the Young Thug, and I was like, who? I was like, young who? So
Right.
like a good uncle, I'm like, I got to take the situation and make myself seem even older. I'm like, Young Thug, like, you might want to step on that young bug right by your foot right now. And
Right.
niece, before you leave, give me a young hug. I'm always like,
Right.
like, so, so, so how did you actually become his attorney in this matter? Did they contact you? Did his manager contact you? Like, what's the practical way this happened
Yeah.
factually?
Well, so you've heard me mention the name Brian Steele. Brian Steele is another attorney in Atlanta. I've known Brian for years. He's a great guy, terrific attorney, um, one of the smartest guys that I know. He had represented Jeffrey previously, and I keep saying Jeffrey because I know him as Jeffrey Williams, Young Thug. Brian had represented Jeffrey previously, and so when these charges came down, Jeffrey reached out, and his people reached out to Brian to represent him, and Brian contacted me. Brian said, "Listen, you and I have worked on cases together previously, and we had. We actually have some cases separate and apart from Jeffrey's case that we're working on right now." And he said, "This case is huge, and it is huge." Um, and he said, "Will you help me with this case? Will you join me and be my co-counsel?" And I was happy to do it. Um, more, honestly, more because Brian was asking me than because it was Young Thug's case. Um, but it's huge. I mean, this is a case that it's a racketeering case. It's a 88-page indictment. It spans 10 years. It has 28 defendants. It is a huge case with tons and tons of discovery and evidence and incidents and murders and robberies and drug crimes and all of that stuff. And unfortunately, um, an unprecedented attempt to use rap lyrics to prosecute someone. And so that's how I became involved. And I was happy to do it. I jumped in. Brian and I have been fighting this case since May of 2022. Um, since Jeffrey's been in custody, and we've been in this fight since then, and it continues on today. We're back in court on Tuesday.
Wow. Wow. Any kind of lighter, cool stories of, let's say, I don't know, walking into a restaurant in Atlanta and they're like, "Yeah, Mr. Adams, come this way."
It's funny you say that. Um, Apparently, everyone, this case has taken on a life of its own, and everyone is watching. It's on YouTube. It's on. I mean, there are multiple people covering it on YouTube. There are bloggers. There's TikTok, um, and I can barely go anywhere without someone saying, "Hey, free Young Thug," or "I like the job you're doing. Y'all keep fighting." Um, you ever seen the movie Coming to America, Eddie Murphy? So
Most certainly.
you remember that scene in Coming to America where Eddie Murphy as Prince Akeem, he goes to a Knicks game, right? And he's
Yes.
he's at the basketball game, and then he leaves. He goes to the
Yes.
bathroom, and there's a
Yes. And
guy who's
the janitor who was walking
right. The
by.
janitor recognizes him, and and falls at his feet and is bowing and all of that. And then afterwards he comes out and people are saying, "Well, how did this guy know you?" And Eddie Murphy says, "Well, it's just some guy I met in the bathroom." So I had a similar incident at the Kroger grocery store. I'll go to the Kroger grocery store, and there's a young man there who is from Cameroon, oddly enough, and I'm just trying to buy some pepper, some bell peppers, and some tomatoes, and this guy comes over and he's like fawning. He's like, "Man, I'm just here from Cameroon. My family we've been watching this on YouTube, and you're Young Thug's attorney. Can I please take a picture with you? Can I would you shake my hand?" And it reminded me of that particular scene. But it's kind of been like that. It's interesting to see that there are a lot of people who are really tuned into this case for a lot of reasons because Young Thug's a celebrity, um, and is receiving a lot of coverage, but also because um, this case is kind of unprecedented, and there are a lot of reasons why folks are really tuned in. This whole issue of using an entertainer's art to prosecute them um, has really kind of gripped people, and people are interested to see how it plays out. And so, folks are watching, and that happens more often than I care to to remember. But yeah, a lot of that, whole lot of that.
So as a criminal defense attorney, there are so many different areas of law. I'm thinking, who do you think would do best in this specific niche of the law? I mean, there are people who have not gone to law school, who don't know anything about the law. They will make a statement and say, "I love to argue, so that's why I should be a lawyer." And sometimes I just listen. I'll be like, "There's a lot more involved in that," but
Right, right.
but okay. um, but is there anyone or any skill set or developing a skill set that you think would do well from a criminal defense standpoint?
Sure. You know, so skill sets that are required to be a good criminal defense attorney. You need someone who's attentive to detail, someone who really has a commitment to seeing that the system works properly. You know, listen, you may be a criminal defense attorney. So some people are guilty of the crimes that they're charged of, right? That's just a reality. But a lot of people are not. And then there are a lot of people who want to make sure that the system works correctly. I always say that at the end of the day, um, when I'm in a courtroom, give me a fair trial, and then let the chips fall where they may. If my client is acquitted, but he's had a fair trial, that's fantastic. If he is convicted, but the trial has been fair, then that's just where the chips fell, right? So you need someone who has a commitment to seeing that justice is done, that the right thing is done. Um, I always tell people that I've been a prosecutor and a defense attorney, and I don't really see a big difference. Right? They're two sides of the same coin. And whether you're a prosecutor or a defense attorney, if you're committed to making sure that the system works correctly, right, then you've done your job. I have represented a lot of people, and I say this all the time. I think I probably started off by saying this. When people walk into my office, they pay me a lot of money. I ain't cheap. Um, and they expect you just to do a good job for them. And so, if you are someone who is willing to look at the details, to put in the work that's necessary, to study, to read, to to argue when you need to argue, but be collegiate when you need to be collegiate, right? To be respectable, then this is the field for you. Then welcome. Come on in. I'd love to have you.
So that actually takes me to my next question, and that is, look, you and I both. I lived in DC for a couple
Hmm.
years. I worked on Capitol Hill for 2 years, right out of college and before law school. So, in DC, you could literally throw a penny up in the air and hit a lawyer or two
But
on its way down.
yeah, yeah,
Um, there are a lot of people still going to law school, to med
yeah,
school, to.
yeah.
Um, are there too many lawyers?
Nah, nah, I don't think so. The world and the country needs lawyers. There's so many different fields where lawyers and someone who's able to interpret the law and look at things in a nuanced way are necessary. No, um, we always need good criminal defense lawyers. There's some bad criminal defense lawyers out there, who don't know what the hell they're doing, or who aren't really they ain't really committed to it. They haven't bought in. They're doing it because maybe they think they'll make some money, but they don't really represent their clients. We don't need them, right? We need the good ones. There are a lot of folks out there entering into contracts who need someone to sit by their side and help them understand that contract. They're entertainers who need to not be bilked and not be taken advantage of. There are folks out there, who have consumer issues, right? Who need someone to explain things to them and stand up for them when they're being cheated or when they're being attacked, by bigger corporations. There are people who are hurt, right, in accidents that is someone else's fault, and they need someone to represent them and truly represent their interests. So no, I don't subscribe to that. We need lawyers out here. We need more lawyers, more good lawyers.
Right, right. Agreed. More good lawyers.
Yeah.
Um, What is a typical work day? Let's say outside of a huge trial like this.
Yeah,
You are now, the captain of your ship, your own law firm.
yeah,
What's a typical day for Keith Adams, outside of, an all-encompassing trial like this?
sure, sure. Well, Keith Adams is a morning person, right? And so Keith Adams gets up about 5 o'clock in the morning. Um, reads a little bit of news. Does a little bit of exercise. Make sure he doesn't drop dead of a heart attack in his 50s, and then gets to
Gotta
the
enjoy these
office.
fruits.
Man, listen, I'm working hard. I got to be around to enjoy them. Um, and
That's
so I,
right.
I normally get to the office somewhere between 6 and 7, and that's kind of early for a lot of people, but not for me because just me personally, and this is not everyone. My brain is kind of hitting on all cylinders at that time in the morning, and so I get to the office early. No one's there. It's just me. Things are quiet. The phone's not ringing. No one's coming into my office, and I can actually do some work, and I kind of catch up on, the stuff that's coming up throughout the course of the day, or the stuff that I didn't finish the day before. And so then by the time 9 o'clock, 8:30, 9 o'clock rolls around and everyone's there and the phones are ringing, I'm working on something or the other. Usually with my door closed. I have a fantastic assistant who kind of runs the office, so I can just kind of focus on the cases. Maybe I meet some clients or meet a client, or check in with a client and let them know what's going on with their case, or maybe nothing's going on with their case, but just to let them know that as well. Um, and I'm usually there till about 5:30 in the afternoon. If I'm not in court, I'm probably in court 50% of the times because I got a lot of cases that that require a court appearance. So 5:30, 6 o'clock, I'm usually out of there. Try to get on home and relax, catch a little bit of CNN or whatever, um, and that's it. That's my day. My day's from about
That's
6 to 6.
that's what I was gonna. That is a 12-hour day for
Yeah,
those not
yeah.
doing the math. That is
When,
a
when I'm when
12 or
I'm when I'm not
13-hour day.
when I'm not on trial. If I'm on trial, you will catch me in the office at 5 o'clock every morning that day of trial, getting ready for trial, listening to a little bit of Public Enemy, Can't Trust It, um, or or the last Mr. Big, Take That S to Trial, um, and then I'm in court most of the day. Come back at about 6 o'clock, and maybe return a couple phone calls. I'm there till about 9. Head on home, get some sleep, and get back at it the next morning at 5 o'clock. That's when I'm on trial. That's when I'm on trial. Trial is a little bit more hectic than a normal non-trial day, and that's okay.
Uh, yeah, man, those are long days, and it shows through your level of commitment and yeah, the competency that you're bringing to the table. This stuff doesn't happen by accident.
No, no, but you know what? But you know what, Gene? This is life, and one thing I tell young attorneys is that you've got to be committed to your craft. If you want to be a good lawyer, you've got to work at it. You've got to put in the work. But separate and apart from that, this stuff will burn you out, brother.
Yes.
Standing in a courtroom next to a 14-year-old young African American kid who's being prosecuted as an adult and looking at spending the remainder of their life in prison it'll that sort of stuff will drain you. It'll burn you out when you're fighting for that kid. And so you've got to have a balance. And so at some point, you've got to put it down. You've got to go spend time with your family. You got to go up to New York and catch your daughter in a play, or you've got to catch up with your frat brothers and get away for a weekend, and just just commiserate, just put it aside for a little bit. And the truth is, you said it a little bit earlier. Um, this has been a great practice for me. It's a very lucrative practice. I've done very well financially, but what is it worth if you don't enjoy it? If you don't take a little bit of time to spend some of that money that you're making to, go hang out and spend some time with your friends and family and so forth. There's got to be a balance. Always has got to be a balance. I don't care if you're a lawyer, a doctor, an engineer. It's got to be a balance, and that's what I would tell any young person who's about to venture into this profession.
That's great, man. I think that's great advice. Give me some really fun areas of sort of maybe outside your career? You traveled internationally. Is there any places that you've gone you want to highlight? Do you drive a, I don't know, Tesla or 911 Porsche? You mentioned a Corvette that you're fixing.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
Yeah, man. Travel is it. Let me tell you something, brother. If I were to give up the practice of law and I could do anything I wanted to do, um, it would be travel. I would be, you know, rest in peace to the late great Anthony Bourdain. I would travel. I'd go to the different countries. This is a huge, great, big world that we're living in, and so I love to travel. I've had the opportunity to go to a lot of places in the Caribbean. I was born in the Caribbean. We've been to, a lot of places in South America, Central America. Been, over to Cuba. Been over to Europe, and so that is what I enjoy. That's my second love, exploring different cultures, exploring different places. Um, Sometimes alone, but more often with some friends. Um, I take a trip, have been for the past 22 or 23 years, been taking a trip with my fraternity brothers once a year. We said, you know what, brothers, if we can't get out the house from away from our work and our wives and our families for 5 days, then we ain't living right. So we take 4 or 5 days, we go somewhere and we play some golf, we do some whitewater rafting, we just commiserate, we just do some drinking, we just hang out, because I love to travel. I love to travel. And when things slow down in this great practice of mine, that's exactly what I'll be doing. You can catch me in Thailand or next year I'm planning to go to Tanzania to go climb Mount Kilimanjaro. So um, there's space if you want to come on along, brother.
I might have to do that. We might have to get a training regimen together for the
Oh,
for the
yeah, that's
probably
true.
what
That's true.
6 months prior. We gotta.
Yeah, that's not for the uninitiated. I can't have you passing out on
That's
me
right.
going up the mountain, brother.
That's right. That's right. Well, this has been great, Keith. Any sort of last thoughts? I don't know, grown man advice that you would give yourself at 22, either professionally or personally, just kind of yeah, that you maybe through your wisdom and experience have gained over the years.
um, you know what? I would, and this is a little controversial. I would say focus in, and let me explain why that's controversial. When you and I were coming up, I'm a little bit older than you, I think, Gene. But when we were coming up, we were always taught, okay, decide what you want to do and do it. Right? These days, a lot of our kids, my kids, you know, um, are told, well, maybe you don't know exactly what you want to do. It's all right to kind of explore. When you get to college, just, take some time to figure out what you really want to do. So it's a little bit, it's not as intense as when we were coming up, but I would tell myself the same thing. I tell my kids this, and they say, oh, "All right, Dad, whatever." I say, you know what? Focus in. Try and decide as soon as you can what it is you want to do, and just get on the path of doing it. Right? The sooner you get to that, and that's not saying that you may not change your mind along the way. Like I said, I started off as pre med. You might decide some years in, you know what, this isn't really me. I need to make a change in course, and that's okay. But don't waste time. I'm in my 50s now, and um, I'm realizing that I have probably more years behind me than I do in front of me, and so um, time is important. And so do focus in, decide what you want to do, go about doing it, and always strike a balance. Always strike a balance. I think I've done that. Um, I had a mom who really motivated me. I had a great family, mom and dad, but my mom was a nurse, and when I was in high school, she decided that wasn't good enough. She went to med school, and she became a doctor. And when I tell you, as if it ain't bad enough having a West Indian parent, think about having a West Indian parent who's also in school at the same time that you in school, making better grades than you
Ooh,
making.
ooh.
So, but she would always say, she'd always, tell me, boy, you ain't got time to waste. You got to do this, you got to do that. Stay focused, and I listened to that. She was on me, and she was right. And so I think I end up telling my kids the same thing. So 22-year-old Keith Adams um, was doing what he needed to do, and I do it all over again, man. I listen. I love the journey I've had. Um, I love the fraternity I'm in, the friends I've made, the profession I'm in. I love it. Like in the words of Jeezy, and I love it,
And I love it.
and I love it.
Keith Keith Adams, man, we appreciate you coming on Career Plug. This has really been insightful. This will probably be part of a law series. We want to make sure that we highlight careers, again, traditional ones, non-traditional ones on this platform. But you are certainly exemplary of excellence
Thank you,
in
brother.
what you do. It is a pleasure to know you and have known you for a number of years. I appreciate you coming on my small platform. Look, we'll see what it does, and if it don't do nothing, it is
Oh, it's gonna do
it's
something.
always a pleasure, man.
It's gonna do
It's
something.
gonna
But
do
I've
something
never,
now.
I've never known you to be involved in anything that didn't do something. So
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I got high hopes, brother, and I'm here whenever you need me. I'm here.
Hey, the chapter motto: always taking care of the business.
There you go, executives. There you go.
All right, brother. Thank you
All
again, Keith
right,
Adams, Young
all
Thugs
right, my friend.
attorney.
Much love, my brother. Take care.